Hello, movers and shakers. Let me ask you, have you seen this latest kerfuffle by Starbucks company regarding removing two gentlemen from their stores because they tried to use the bathroom? Well, I want to teach you a little bit something about optics and what that incident could teach us about our moving business and our businesses and how you can learn from Starbucks mistakes. So stay tuned. Hi guys, I'm Jae Burnham and this is the Six Figure Moving Academy. Thank you guys for coming to this video. Just wanted to ask you to do one thing for me. When you come to this video, please go down, hit the subscribe button below, hit the bell icon right next to it. That way you can be informed of when I upload my next video. I try to do a video every single week for you guys, so hopefully you will like this. But today we're going to be talking about optics and what we can learn from the kerfuffle that Starbucks did and some of the other companies and a couple things that I have done in my own past that you could hopefully learn from when it regards to doing or your company's policies, etc. Okay, so if you guys don't know, Starbucks is going through a PR flap right now, right? There's a PR flap that they're having right now, and that is in regards to a manager at a Starbucks asking two gentlemen to leave because they were loitering inside a Starbucks, just talking. They didn't buy any coffee. They didn't get donuts or whatever. And apparently one of them tried to get up and go use the bathroom, but apparently you got to get a code or a key or something to get into the Starbucks bathroom, and they don't. And their company policy is that they don't let you use the bathroom unless you're a paying customer, which, first of all, that's a ridiculous statement in the first place. I mean, come on. You're not going to let somebody use the bathroom because they're not paying you. Your company has a policy where you don't let somebody use the bathroom unless they pay. First of all, that's a ridiculous rule, but be it as it may, that's the rule. Not only that, they were in the store, they didn't buy anything, and they were just talking. The manager saw what was happening. He went over there, or she went over there. I think it was a she. Asked him, hey, would you please leave? You guys if you're not going to buy anything, please leave our store. They refused. And they said, look, politely, I'd ask you to remove or buy something or get something from the store. They refused. And finally, the cops came. The cops asked them to leave, and they said, no, we're not leaving. So eventually they got arrested. Now the cops, there was no culpability in the cops here, and there's truthfully no culpability in what the manager did. Right? She followed their company's policies. Now, there are some people that want to turn it into a black thing and a white thing and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into it, but you got the point what I'm trying to make is the optics of following some rules. Some rules are just stupid, petty rules that, if followed, creates a big kerfuffle and turns a anthill into a mountain. For instance, this rule, not allowing your patrons or people in your store to use the bathroom unless they're a paying customer. You got the rule, fine. You enforce it, fine. I get it. That's your rule. If that's the way you want to operate business, fine. That's what you could do, right? But what happens then? What happens when you enforce it? Well, you create ill will. You create a bad environment by enforcing that rule to people who are sitting there just minding their own business. They came into the store, they started sitting down. They obviously wanted to participate. Apparently they were waiting on some friends to come in and then they were going to buy something. But in the meantime, they were just waiting and talking. I mean, is it really that important to you to enforce a rule that a very minor and petty rule, quite honestly, and then be hit with such backlash over such a minor thing, right? Is it really worth it? Is it really worth it to you guys to lose a patron, to get a bad review, to get a bad reputation, all because you decided to enforce one simple rule, which in hindsight, in armchair quarterbacking this, is really ridiculous, right? Is it that important to you? Okay, so in this sense, the optics of the thing, even though nobody did anything wrong, right? The two gentlemen in question, I could see their point of view. We're not doing anything. We're just talking. What's the problem? What's the problem? People are coming in, they're getting their coffee and they're leaving. I'm just sitting here talking with my friend. I'm waiting for somebody to come in. Then we're going to get something to go or whatever they were going to do. Or they wanted to use the bathroom. Let them use the bathroom. Really? Is it that important to you to enforce that rule, to be such a stickler on the rules over something minor? Now, we're talking minor enforcement of minor petty rules versus the enforcement of very major and substantial rules. There's totally two different things. For instance, you're definitely going to enforce a rule that nobody steals from you. That's a major rule. That's not a petty rule. You're going to enforce that, whether that upsets patrons or not. Excuse me. But a minor rule, having a couple guys just sit in the store talking and chatting in your store, is not that big of a difference. But in this sense, it created such a kerfluffle that it was nationwide. It was on national news. It's all over the internet. It's just horrible. All right, so that was a mishandling of a situation by a company, Starbucks, or actually their employees, over something minor and so on and so forth. So the optics of it was very, very bad. I mean, it's a horrible viewpoint over a very minor point. But now let's take another example of something that occurred recently, and that was Facebook, right? Mark Zuckerberg just had to go and sit in front of Congress and answer a bunch of questions about his company and about the information that he sells to third-party apps and so on and so forth. Now, here's the thing that's could be a tremendous violation of our personal privacy and our rights. Plus that is being sold and used for somebody. I get that. That's you don't know what's happening. You got this information. It's going to a third-party company, and they're selling that information to who knows who. And that could be a very, very unsettling consideration. But here comes Mark Zuckerberg, comes down, sits in front of Congress, was very matter-of-fact in his questions, very apologetic, he said, look, I screwed up. I admit it, we didn't take enough times. Here is what we're going to do to solve that problem. And then he sit there and over 2 days or maybe 3 days, I think it was 2 days, answering mundane BS questions about Facebook and their privacy policies and whether they hit conservatives versus liberals and all this other thing. But the guy sat there, he stayed composed, he answered the questions very specifically. When he didn't understand what they were trying to question, or he wanted to make sure that they knew what question they were asking, he says, I don't understand your question, please say it again. He did not get rattled. He did not get emotional. He didn't do anything but stay calm, collected, and cool. Now, the optics of that was that the stock prices of Facebook went up the roof. The stock market on Facebook went down, 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 down. He did this thing, and then they just started going up. They never had a rally ever in the history of the stock market for a stock that has dived that far to go up that radically. And not only make up the ground that they lost, but actually make up ground. So the optics of that was a lot different. So let's take the two scenarios, Facebook and Starbucks situations. One, you have Starbucks enforcing a very petty rule that turned into a big nothing burger, right? It was a really nothing burger situation. And now it's this humongous story nationwide, totally bad press, and Starbucks did not take a stance really to effectively handle the situation. Now what Starbucks is going to do in an attempt to make it up to really thing is they're going to close down the stores on one day and have a racial biased day where they're going to train everybody on this kind of stuff. And I don't even think it's a race situation. I know a lot of people because the two gentlemen that were asked to leave were black. So I know that people are going to turn it into a black and white situation. I just think that they were enforcing their rules and it had nothing to do with person in black. There's no evidence to say, other than the people were black, that it was a racial situation. There's no proof whatsoever that it was racially motivated at all, other than the people wanted to make it racially motivated. Just because they wanted to be outraged that 2 people were asked to be removed. All right. And that, which is ridiculous in itself. But the point is now Starbucks is really coming up from behind. Whereas Facebook, you got Mark Zuckerberg, the head of it, coming out and just saying, look, this happened. There was an error on our part. We admit it. We're sorry for it. And here's what we're going to do. Correct it. Feel free to ask us questions. This is how we're going to handle it. And everybody's happy. So there's 2 approaches here. You can get emotional and enforce a dumb, pathetic, stupid rule, or you could stay calm and collected and handle a major situation and turn it into a positive. Now, when I get upset, when I get attacked, I tend to act very emotionally, like many of you may do. And I know there are some of you out there, when you're attacked online or something, you get all huffy, puffy, your chest gets beefed up, and you get really ticked off, and you get emotional. I'm 50 years old, or close to 50 years old, and I'm getting more and more to the point where I can take a deep breath and think. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I'm just saying I'm getting better, and I'm 50. When I was young, it was like, you attack me, I'm going to hit you hard, man. I'm coming back at you 30 times harder than you hit me, and I'm going to take you down. I'm finding that is not necessarily the best approach. It's not the best approach in business. I'll give you an example of a recent example. I used a moving company to help me with an unload in a town. They did a decent job. It wasn't the greatest of jobs. I wasn't overly impressed, but they didn't do a bad job either. So it was kind of middle of the road. It was fine. There was a situation. I wrote a check, and it didn't get cashed until like a month later. And I didn't check it. I was like, okay, I went over, I checked my bank account, did my stuff. I looked at it, saw what money was in the thing, and I didn't actually check to see if that check had cleared. I just assumed that it did. It was my fault. I screwed up. So, I got a hold of the guy. We worked it out. We've been in communication. I told him what happened. I was very straight up. Say, hey, look, this is what happened. I didn't realize it took you this long you go to cash it. I had spent the money, and when he went to cash it, the money was spent. I didn't realize that he hadn't cashed it. My fault. I should have checked. It was my fault. Yes, he should have cashed it when he got it instead of holding on to it for a month, but that is what it is. It's my fault. I should have checked. It was my fault, and we had talked about it. And then he got emotional, or, maybe I wasn't in communication with him as much as I should have, whatever. And then he left a bad review on my Facebook. So I'm like, well, screw that. You know what I mean? And I saw it and I'm like, well, that's like pretty petty. If you got a beef with me to that point, at least communicate with me. And in this person's offense, he did send me a message that day going, what's up? I didn't have a chance to talk with him or anything. And then I see that he did this and I just got emotional. So I took his exact thing, I copied and pasted and put it on his. Now that's me being emotional. That's not me being rational. This is me turning a petty thing, turning something very small into a big monster. And then other people somehow got a wind of it. I found out he's talking shit about me other places. That's fine. That's his problem. That's his issues. That's his unprofessionality. I exasperated the situation by being emotional and not handling it creatively, with confidence, and being proactive. I was being reactive, right? That's the same thing that Starbucks is. They're being reactive, and what's happening and the difference is with Facebook, with Mark Zuckerberg, he's being proactive. Now, had I been proactive, I could have handled the situation in a lot better terms. So that is the lessons we can learn between the optics of something, because it's not really how necessarily sometimes how you handle a situation, it's how it is looked upon, right? So when you do something, even if it's reactive, you've got to consider, what's this going to look like to everybody else? Is this going to affect others negatively? How are others going to respond to this? And if you actually take a moment and, before you go reactive, realize the optics of this situation. Is it worth it to cause a bad PR? Is it worth it to cause you to lose friendships? Is it worth it to lose respect or dignity or business reputation over something that could be easily handled, easily fixed, or something that's very, very, very petty, right? Or is it major? And how are you going to be, what's the optics of that, and how are you going to handle it? So before you act reactively, sit back, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, how will this look if I act in such a manner? How is this going to do it? Is this going to be a positive thing, or is it going to be a negative thing? How I acted was reactive. It ended up being a very negative situation. It's not horrible. I'm actually doing a mea culpa now, so hopefully this is kind of fixes it a little bit. But you got to look at the optics of this. How does this look to others, right? You are involved in it. You cannot see this rationally. So you got to pop your head out of it, pop yourself out of it, and look at it from a mile high altitude of the situation. And you got to do that honestly, right? When you do that, you could be proactive versus reactive. So considering the optics of the situation is going to help you solve a situation, whether it's major or minor, in the future, okay? So you could act like Mark Zuckerberg and be proactive, or you could be like Starbucks and be reactive, and then you're going to have to deal with the fallout of such, right? So no matter what the situation, no matter what you do that screws up, my solution is for you to be proactive, because no matter how bad it is, if you're proactive, you can actually solve the problem and actually make something negative be very, very positive, right? So consider that when you're in business. Take these lessons of Starbucks, take these lessons of Facebook, and take the lessons that I do, and realize, what could you do to turn your situation down when something has. When you get a bad review, what is the optics? If you respond negatively, how is that going to look? You know what I mean? If you're getting a lot of bad reviews, instead of blaming the customer because they didn't do this or that, the other thing, before you react, ask yourself, okay, if I act in this manner, how is this going to look? Right? Now, and before you enforce a dumb rule, and here's something, it's not necessarily dumb. A customer cancels on you, you have a cancellation policy, and you say, okay, good. If you cancel within a certain amount of time, I'm going to charge you this. Before you charge them that, ask yourself, is that $100, is that $200 worth it? Is that $100, that $200 for that cancellation, that rescheduling fee, worth it to you to cause bad PR? How's that going to look to that other person when they are now charged with $100, $200, $300 for that cancellation? Is that $300 really worth it to get a bad review? If it is, great, go for it. And I know how sometimes we could get frustrated. I'm just giving you an example of you being reactive on a policy, enforcing a company policy that should be there. Don't get me wrong, but you got to ask yourself, is it really worth it? It's good to put it into the contract, to put it there and let them know to tell your customers, hey, this is something we have, it could happen, just to get the customer. But then you got to look at the optics of this. How is the person going to react? And then from that reaction, what could happen? What's the worst case scenario? It could go viral, whatever it is, right? So before you react, sit back, go up like a mile from above the situation and ask yourself, if I enforce this policy or if I do react in this manner, how is it going to affect others? How is that going to affect how others see me and my company, right? When you do that, hopefully you'll come to the right decision and be proactive versus reactive. So these are the lessons you can learn from Facebook and Starbucks. And I hope this was a great video for you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. I'm Jae Burnham, and this is the Six Figure Moving Academy. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon. Give this a thumb up. I'd love to hear any kind of situation, what situation you ran into and how you handle it, whether it was negatively or positively. I want to know how you came out, and then what lessons you could impart to others. I would love to hear your stories about this. Love to hear from you guys. So leave me a comment in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a good day. Bye-bye.